Well, yesterday was Turkey Day. We both drank great wine. We had awesome turkey, as the kids say, it was yummy in the tummy. And while we were eating good food and drinking great wine, the autonomy markets kept trucking forward. Tesla announced the Tesla API for Cybercab. Cybercabs started showing up in showrooms around the country. It's even going to Art Basel on December 7th. And then we're having the outgoing parties taking shots at autonomy. Governor Newsom's making the critical mistake that Biden made in 2021. New Mexico's trying to ban autonomous trucks, autonomous vehicles. And then the day before Turkey Day, there was the Pony.ai IPO. Let's start with that IPO because I'm a little perplexed. Why the heck do you do an IPO the day before Turkey Day? Because all I've got my mind on is not burn the turkey and properly decanting the wine.
I think on last week's Autonomy Markets podcast, I talked about that companies would drop bad news the day before Thanksgiving, or even maybe later today. We're recording this on Friday. Yeah, it is kind of weird. A lot of people are just not in the office, clearly the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, for Goldman to price this thing. I think it was Goldman was the lead to price this thing the day before Thanksgiving. But in the grand scheme of things, we're not talking about a significant deal in the market, meaning that they raised about $260 million as part of this IPO. That implies a market capitalization of over $4 billion. With cash on the balance sheet, just to get to your point in terms of should this even be public, let's say the enterprise value of this company is, in the 3.7 billion range on revenue that I think is around 60 million. I mean, the numbers, not a lot of detail in the filing. It was a little sparse in terms of what we typically like to see. That's 60 times revenue. So it's a very high valuation. Look, valuations, revenue multiples, if you believe revenue is going to accelerate dramatically in 25, 26, and so on, but you saw some chunkiness, I'll call it, in the reported revenue up to this date. Like, the what they call taxis, robo-taxis, was, I think, down in 2023. It looks like it's up to stabilized in 24. There's a licensing arm. I think that's Toyota. Like, what are you familiar with their Toyota relationship?
Toyota's one of the largest shareholders there. They have a joint venture with a state-owned automobile company in China. I could see a future where this becomes Toyota's China play, because you have to have that joint venture. Outside of that, I'm really not sure what Toyota sees in Pony.ai, but I will say, having been in the vehicle many times now, it performs well. It's a really great car. It's great technology, but I'm concerned that Mr. Peng and his co-founder, they have super voting rights. You're really not having any say in the company, and that 60x multiple, it's expensive. It's in the nosebleeds. There's no way to say it the other way than it's in the nosebleeds.
So you're saying you'd be worried about Toyota not having, whatever, I think their ownership is in the teens, percentage-wise. I might be wrong on that, but not having a say. You don't think they have a right of first refusal to take this technology in. But I think on the past podcast, your belief was these auto OEMs would not want to own the technology. They'd only want to partner out there. So does it really matter that they can't really own or control what's happening at Pony.ai?
It matters for the data perspective. Obviously we're running into CCP issues here, but that data is very valuable. And despite what's been previously reported, I am very sure that through a joint venture, Toyota could figure a way to monetize that data inside of China and to scale and to perhaps move into Hino, which is their large scale, their Class 6 and Class 8 truck division, perhaps move into Hino trucks and scale it there. Because right now, Pony has a very big growing robo truck business, which we call it in America an autonomous truck business. Toyota could perhaps capture some of that if they could get access to that data, as long as it stays on the mainland.
I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the robo-truck, because one of the things as we've started to construct a model on this company, robo-truck was the largest contributor from a revenue standpoint. That licensing business, which I guess is Toyota, has kind of fallen off. We don't know the terms of that contract, but the robo-truck is an issue, is the strong one. How does that evolve? Does Toyota, use it for robo-truck? And do they even have trucks that are suitable for the market relative to some of the trucking autonomous companies that we're familiar with in the United States? How do you see them emerging in that space? It's clearly not going to be in the United States. Does that matter for these large global OEMs on the trucking side?
You have to look at the world in separate markets for autonomy, a similar way that we've talked in previous podcasts about operating systems. You have the United States, you have the EU, then you have Asia, and then you have China. So if you're looking at China, Toyota could expand their relationship with GTMC, which is a joint venture they have, which is backed by the state party, the CCP, expanded into Class 8 trucks. Because currently, Pony.ai is only operating 190 robo trucks in the country, when the average truck is driving 16,315 miles. Interesting there, Pony.ai is operating some of those as a service. They're operating some of those through a joint venture. So Toyota could backfill that, scale that fleet into the thousands, and that could be a pretty nice business of mainly just selling those trucks and perhaps getting a licensing fee for allowing it to ride on their trucks, which might right the ship on Pony's licensing model.
Is there any ability for the Trump administration to flex some type of stress on Toyota and other OEMs not to partner with autonomous technology companies out of China by threatening, either some type of additional tariffs in the US as it relates to the EU? Like, is there any kind of connection there that can be done? I know in terms of other countries, obviously the EU has joined us in some sanctions, but how would that work in this case, in your view?
It's possible. I don't know if the Trump administration would flex unless they made a critical mistake of trying to import that technology into America. If Toyota's going to operate that technology just on the mainland, not export it to the EU, not export it to the US, I don't see the Trump administration flexing. This is very similar to the strategy that VW is taking with Horizon Robotics. It's their joint venture that they're operating to develop autonomous vehicles in China. They're only operating it on the mainland. VW has their own problems more than anything, but their strategy with Horizon was only to operate on the mainland. Perhaps Toyota's strategy with Pony is to only operate it on the mainland. I say that with a caveat, and there is a press release that they are looking to export that technology to Luxembourg. And if they do export that from Luxembourg to another EU member state, then perhaps you could see the EU Parliament in Brussels do something, but I don't see the United States and President Trump making any sort of flex unless they look to import that technology into America. And let's not forget, President Trump, he truthed it, tariffs are coming. So it'll make it very expensive to even import it into America if that's a path they wanted to go forward on.
Grayson, I've been to Luxembourg. It's not very small. You're not going to see a lot of autonomous miles within Luxembourg. One more thing for context in terms of Pony.ai. I think you're talking about cash balances in terms of US dollars of around 700 million, let's call it. This deal was a $260 million deal, as I previously mentioned. The company's burning about $140 million a year. So, you've got some lifespan. But again, we're still in an industry here where it's going to take continued investment before these companies get it to free cash flow positive. There is a pot of gold at the end. Like, look at Uber, and no one thought, or even let's look at Amazon and how many years that Bezos was doubted, let's call it, in terms of no profitability. So just because there's no profitability today, if you can last and develop a winning technology, there is a pot of gold at the end, or a pot of Bitcoin, as the case may be.
Oh, geez, speaking of Bitcoin, do you see that there's a rumor now that Trump wants to eliminate all capital gains on cryptocurrencies?
That would be very interesting.
Extremely interesting. One last thing on Pony. Yes, there's a pot of gold. And hopefully it's not the Lucky Charms pot of gold, but it's a real pot of gold at the end. The way that Pony.ai is currently constructed in their strategy, their business makeup, when you go through their SEC filings, for all de facto purposes, and I say this based on having read the filings, it's a Chinese company. That technology cannot be exported. I ever see any path forward the next 4 years. And if Vance runs for president and is elected, let's say 8 years into the United States, the market's going to be very mature by then. So did Pony.ai handicap themselves by going all in on China, since their export markets are very, very limited?
China's a big market, so I think they'll do fine with the markets in China and those countries that are friendly to China, which are many. Let's move on to Tesla. This week, Grayson, Tesla made an announcement. Of course, it was on X, or I tend to continue to want to call it Twitter, but that's fine. By the way, you and I, neither of us have yet to rage quit Twitter or X like Rob Reiner, I guess, did this past week. Anyway, I digress. The announcement to, I guess it was their development community, is an API for fleets. And I think I also saw some job postings for fleet operators that Tesla is looking to hire. But back to the APIs, you can get on the APIs, from what I see, you can get live data from the vehicle, such as vehicle health, location, whether it's parking or being driven. Is this step that we've been waiting for in terms of post-election of Tesla preparing for a rollout of Cybercab? And if so, when?
It's 100% preparing, just like Rob Reiner directed Harry Met Sally. Harry will be back. Reiner will be back on X. It's only a matter of time. We can put that in the prediction column. As it relates to the API, yes. What Tesla's done with the API, and I'm going to play with it this week and next week, is they're allowing, I see a model emerging where, say, you have Walt's Autonomy Company. You go out and you buy 100 or you buy 1,000 because you're a baller now. You can do this show, so you're a big baller now. Walt's Autonomy is going to buy 1,000 Cybercabs. You're going to operate them. The missing key was the API to get the data. So you need to know where that vehicle is. Is that vehicle parked? Perhaps you have a sensor in that car. Is that vehicle cleaned? Is it moving? What is its charge health? How much range does it have? You need all that data in your central command, and you can automate that whole process. Tesla's laying the groundwork to scale a very, very big service. And as you said, Walt, many times, the Uber overhang, it could be growing with this API, because I'm looking at this from a developer standpoint, and I'm saying, here's one of the missing pieces to scale a very big service.
So in this case, are you arguing then that if I'm allowing others, developers, to have access to this information via the APIs, that rather than think about this as a Tesla only owned fleet, that you could have other owners of fleets in different parts of the country that are utilizing Tesla vehicles, whether it's Cybercab or otherwise? Is that what it implies, or am I missing the point here?
It's 100%. And I'll give you another anecdote to further back this up. Tesla on X announced this week, at the end of a lease, you can buy the vehicle out. That never used to happen before. They will now allow you to buy the vehicle out of the lease at the end of the lease. That was a big change. So yes, I believe that you will have a series of fleet owners, fleet operators around the country that will operate these fleets. I know Alan Kornhauser, a professor at Princeton, he's looking at how do I get my hands on 1,000 to operate them in Newark, New Jersey. That's what he wants to do. So you're looking at other individuals that have access to financing that will operate these fleets. It's brilliant from Tesla's standpoint. They're not going to have to deal with the maintenance. They're not going to have to deal with owning the vehicle. They're not going to deal with maintaining it. They're just going to collect a fee for selling the vehicle. And then I'm sure there's going to be some sort of licensing fee that goes along with it. It's a robotaxi light service. The term software as a service is robotaxi as a service.
From an investor standpoint, I think that reduces the risk. It certainly, if everything we're saying actually happens as we think it might, and again, who knows? Them meaning Tesla, standing up their own single fleet across the country, and the thousands, if not millions, of cars that are required to do that, versus embracing partners as fleet managers, it just reduces the risk. And I think as I pull this string on fleet management, again, we've said this on past podcasts, Uber has talked about this on a recent earnings call. It's more of a European thing, or in Asia, India, I think, up to this point for Uber. But I think there's a desire to embrace more fleets. Certainly Lyft is developing their own fleet management services. An important, I think, thread to follow. And certainly if we're analyzing this right, strong signal if Tesla is basically signaling that is a business opportunity that exists. And I think money can flow there with perhaps lower risk than everything have to be piled into Tesla.
It lowers the risk and builds the excitement for Tesla. Here's the question, and this we have to put on our lawyer hats and read the terms of service. Let's say you're operating 1,000. Will Tesla allow you to put those into the Uber fleet and to license those to Uber, or will they only allow you to run it through the mocked up? We haven't seen a real version of the app. We've seen a mocked up version of the Tesla app. That's going to be really interesting to see where those terms of services fall.
Let's move on to Cybercab, which frankly, from my standpoint, after that Disney-like show that they did on the Time Warner movie lot, I kind of assumed that we wouldn't see that thing for years to come. And yet Elon's dropping these cars into, malls and stuff. I think there's one downtown New York City. I think there's one coming to you. That they're dropping these cars all over the country. And honestly, this is what we've talked about over the past dozen episodes that we've done, the need for the industry to self-promote more, get their products and services out in front of people. And here's a company that notably does not advertise, and yet in this case, this is not advertising per se, but getting the product out in the middle of the people, whether it's you seeing it in Palm Beach, me seeing it downtown New York, or Kim Kardashian, I think, was in one with a robot.
She was friends with Optimus. Brilliant.
Optimus. She had a date with Optimus, and Optimus picked her up in the Cybercab and brought her back.
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, you can insert your favorite imagination here. We can leave that one to people's imaginations, because I'm sure somebody built some AI generated thing there for somebody to get a good time. I'll say that. If you look at the way that they say, oh, Tesla's an advertised, but the Kardashian thing went viral. Then the vehicles start popping up all over the place. What I'm trying to find out, and I haven't got the data on, how many Cybercabs are there out there? The rumors that it's in the 20s, and I believe that rumor. And I'm starting to add up malls where Tesla's publicly announced the malls, using that as a base point. And so far, I haven't got to 20, but I believe it is around 20 to 23. Then on December 7th, Tesla drops an invite. Art Basel, come meet Cybercabs. You have every major influencer from the art world in Miami for Art Basel. The question is, does Tesla follow the model that BMW so brilliantly did with the BMW painted cars, with Basquiat and Warhol, and have the Cybercab painted by a new artist, start to build bigger and bigger buzz, perhaps Nelly Ahmad or Lyrica goes and sells, and they start to build more and more buzz. Then it becomes a piece of art. And then what Tesla's doing so strategically, they're putting it into popular culture. And Tesla's doing what I always said for years and years and years was going to be Apple's strategic advantage. They're leveraging their retail footprint. Apple has a physical retail presence in 49 of the 50 states. Tesla, I believe, is at 32 to 33 physical states. So let's just hypothetically say they produce 33 Cybercabs. They put one in every state or in multiple in every state. They're going to build, people are going to come in, they're going to get curious, they're going to sell Model 3s, they're going to sell Model Ys. And then when the vehicle gets going, oh, would you like to take a demo ride in the Cybercab? Lo and behold, those things are going to start flying out because the public is going to trust it and they're going to experience it. That's their competitive advantage. That's what they have over everybody, which raises the question, will Waymo have to follow suit? Meta had to do it with Apple. They had to do pop-ups. Will Waymo have to do pop-ups now?
So let's stick with Tesla for a second, because I think this is what I would define as brand advertising. So, my partners, Rich Greenfield and Brandon Ross, they're the media guys, and they've told me about the different ways you advertise. One's just to kind of establish your brand. Others get people in the store or whatever it is. Being a leader in technology is a brand advertising. And what I've already seen is tie-ins to the Cybercab is in your neighborhood. Go check it out. And by the way, also do a test drive of FSD on any of our models, including the Cybertruck. So to me, it's almost a way of look how cool this thing is. But also don't worry, also you should be trying FSD as a reason that if you're an existing owner to give it a try, and, as well as come and buy a product, because this is the advanced technology that you're going to want to own. So I think that's certainly important branding for them. And by the way, in terms of these stores, I've seen historically like AT&T, when they used to own Warner, they would have Game of Thrones and movie stuff in their flagship stores to bring people in while they're trying to sell them AT&T services. So I think these types of things are branding, and I think they're clearly positive for them. And by the way, we're looking forward to FSD 13. It's all over Twitter. The people are expecting it imminently. By the way, I had gotten a free trial before we get to Waymo. Question for you. I had gotten a free trial for FSD because I had not had it before. It literally just expired, and they want me to re-up. I'm assuming that once FSD 13 drops, whenever it does, they're going to give me another free trial for a month. So I should just probably wait a week or two and see if FSD 13. And by the way, if they don't give me a free trial, I'll just subscribe and try it out. But is that kind of the pattern that they give free trials during every upgrade?
Not necessarily a pattern, but FSD 13 has been so remarkably hyped. I would expect it. And you're not going to have to wait a week. You're going to have to wait 2 to 3 days because the rumor is going to drop by the end of November. We're seeing that buzz there. And on the retail front, on a personal element. So Brad Gerster, we've talked about him last week from Alter Capital. He was saying how good the 12.36 was and how it was a big breakthrough. So what I did, I went to my local Tesla showroom and said, I went in there. I was like, I'll just go buy a Model Y. I want to see what it's like. And they said, no, take the new Model 3 out for a test drive. Here you go. I did 15 minutes. I walked in and bought the car. It was that big of a moment. So you start multiplying that. And then what Tesla does so brilliantly is a referral program. I refer you to buy a Tesla. You get $2,000 off of your Tesla, and I get a $1,000 Tesla credit. It's brilliant, the loyalty that this brand has. And it's interesting. I think a lot about Tesla, and I think a lot about, this goes back to your partner, Brandon Ross, who over at Lightshed, he picks some funky stuff, picks some good stuff, and he picks some out there stuff. When you do the Lightshed podcast.
You're talking about music, of course.
Music. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Not stocks. All the stock picks are great. Just the music.
He's making stock picking great again. There we go. His insights and analysis, I got to give him two credit on two things that I follow that he does. His insights analysis on Live Nation are really well done, and his insights analysis on Spear Entertainment, which used to be MSG, is also very good. So I think about this. Tesla's a band that makes money. Individuals go all over the country, and they like the Grateful Dead and Fish, and they follow these bands around, but they don't make money. They spend money. Well, Tesla fans go all over X. They follow Tesla as it's a band on a digital sense, and they make money by buying the stock. I think a lot about that. I mean, Tesla's, for all practical purposes, is a cult band. It's not a technology company. It's not an auto company. It's a cult band.
Yeah, I don't know. People would view that. Some people would say that's a positive. Others might say it's a negative.
It's a product
Yes.
that makes your loyal fans money. Look at the amount of millionaires that Tesla's printed over the years from the retailers that bought their stock because they believe in it.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if everyone that's buying a Tesla is necessarily buying their stock. Just like I would think that given the network that they have in terms of where the car is chargeable and the product performance is the reason people own it, even though some may disagree with how Elon conducts himself publicly on his own Twitter platform and elsewhere. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and there's always going to be, Apple's got their loyal people that buy phones every year, but they have zero growth, right? Because it takes more than just your loyal people to do it. And I'm a skeptic on like everything gives me a referral. I don't know if like there's anything that unique about their referral program in terms of people buying it. I mean, I did when my wife decided, to her credit, to buy one of these things. I'm like, I read about it and I'm like, I called up a buddy who was like, all right, get your grand or whatever. And he could have sent me a bottle of wine, by the way. But anyway, I digress. These are all basics, but which brings us to Waymo in terms of companies maybe not doing the basics. And it is different in that Waymo's not trying to sell cars. They're trying to sell a service. So like everything we said about Tesla is certainly positive, but does it really apply to Waymo in terms of like, should they put a Waymo car in New York City in Times Square to get the citizenry hyped up to ask their politicians, why don't we have what San Francisco has? We are a better city. We need it more. Where is our Waymo? And maybe they just need a physical example of a Waymo sitting in the middle of Times Square to get people, oh, is it coming? Is it coming? And then when it's not, to build that disappointment to drive up citizenry against their government, which is holding it back, which you claim is the case in New York.
Yeah, I mean, just look at congestion pricing. You want to talk about how to ruin an economy. We can go down that rabbit hole. Times Square, not so sure. Grand Central will be a more interesting place. Look, you don't have to commute on the Metro North. You don't have to smell the beer cans going by you, the urinals that are never clean that smell horrific. You can get picked up in your Waymo house in Fairfield County, taken to the city, and taken home in the peace and comfort. That could start to build it because you have to engage the public. No organization is properly engaging the public and talking about the positive benefits of autonomous vehicles and the positive impact it's going to have on their lives. And meanwhile, you've got rogue politicians that are out there holding meetings the day before Thanksgiving with no public notice, which, by the way, was a violation of state law in New Mexico, to try and ban the vehicles because that's what you were told to do by a special interest group. The public is on your side, you win.
So maybe that's a good segue into a topic, and we'll come back to XAI, but a good topic to some of the events that happened, what I would say are like against EV, AV in the market by what is the exiting dominant party, the Democrats. The one you mentioned a couple in the intro. What you didn't mention is Gavin Newsom, I think, was basically talking about EV credits in California, but excluding them for Tesla. As a former California resident involved in this industry, like, what is the thought process to, I mean, we talked about this last week in terms of like, how did Elon support Trump so much? In part, it was being excluded from Biden's powwow of EV companies in the White House. And now you're a guy that employs tons of people. And in terms of employment, let alone his technology in your state. And now you're going to basically single him out in some way. Did I read this right? Am I getting gaslit? Or is this actually an attempt by Newsom to do this in California?
There's a great line in The Wizard of Oz. If only I had a brain. That applies to this scenario. You have to look back at history. 2021, Biden did not invite Elon Musk to the White House EV Summit in 2021. Why? Because of the union issue. So what does Biden do today outgoing? They gave Rivian a $6.6 billion federal loan to build a plant in Georgia. You read the fine print, must not interfere with union organizing efforts. Okay? We know they're in the back for this. Then you have the congressman in Silicon Valley, Ro Khan, came out, and I believe, and I'm going to paraphrase Mr. Khan here, Congressman Khan, it was an idiotic move. He goes, history is repeating itself. This is a great mistake that'll have a huge negative impact on the Fremont economy. Why? Why continue to single this one individual out because you don't agree with his stance on unions? So you don't agree that I wear colorful shirts, so you're going to single me out? This is politics at its absolute worst.
The union one is fascinating because the latest dust up was Trump, who had the head of one of the unions speak at the convention and basically nominated for Secretary of Labor someone that is favorable to the unions, but at the same time spent his Thanksgiving with Elon and is very pro this way. So it's not, I think it's a matter of like, if you have enough leadership, it shouldn't matter if you're cultivating and trying to help or at least hear what the unions are saying, but at the same time, have conversations on other fronts with business. So I'm not sure why Newsom in this case can't look at it, or Biden back in 2021 can't look at it the same way. Like he's still an important person regarding the employment and, to your point, the economic growth and the technology, and being a technology leader. Being a technology leader does have advantages. There's been studies in terms of growth associated with technological adoption in markets. It just seems silly. But Newsom wasn't the only one. There was another one in New Mexico, and then I'll talk about the FTC on Uber.
There is a politician in New Mexico who is taking orders. That's right. I'm going to remove this individual's name for privacy at this point. Is taking orders to ban autonomous trucks and autonomous vehicles in New Mexico. They held a hearing the day before Thanksgiving without giving public notice to try and ram through the ability to ban autonomous trucks and autonomous vehicles because that's what she was told to do by special interest. We're both business people here. And when you're negotiating, and the President Trump talks a lot about this, he talks about his new Treasury Secretary nominee. It talks about this. Every business leader talks about leverage in a negotiation. It's a common fact. When you have a really great negotiation lever, you use it. You don't walk away from it.
But what are you referring to? What negotiation lever are you referring to?
This is an all-time idiotic maneuver. There's an employer, which I will name in a minute because it was so stupid what they did. In Albuquerque, New Mexico, Torque Robotics, it's a subsidiary of Daimler. It's not an independent subsidiary of Daimler. It's a subsidiary of Daimler, Autonomous Trucks. They announced that they are moving to Dallas. The deal was already done, but they didn't hold back the announcement to try and get leverage to stop the bill. They left before the bill even got introduced. We lost all of our leverage in New Mexico because of the idiotic maneuver they made by not understanding how to play politics. So now there's no leverage. Oh, you're going to kill the only autonomous trucking company that's here. They already left. There's no leverage left. You got to keep the leverage. That's how you win in these circumstances. They're going to ram through these bad bills. They're going to spread like cancer across the United States until we get a federal framework that's going to stop the shenanigans and is going to allow autonomy to thrive in America. It's going to usher in what I call the autonomy economy.
Grayson, I've been a long-time listener of The Road to Autonomy, and you're always so laid back and relaxed, and they're great informative interviews you do. And then I enter the scene and you just get fired up. And I am glad that I have activated that. I've brought my New York edge to you and gotten you fired up. How does it feel to have the blood rushing and, just the opinions flowing?
Feels great. I feel like you hit the superhero button on me and you unlocked something because I could say the things that need to be said and you bring it out of me, and I enjoy these conversations with you very much.
Let me finish with FTC, led by Lena Khan. It's just a joke. I think I tweeted that it's like, you remember the recording of the Jerky Boys back when we were, well, you're younger than I am, but back when I was a kid, it was a great recording. For our listeners, go to Spotify and search up Jerky Boys Sue Everybody. It's actually called Punitive Damages, and it's just sue everybody. And it doesn't matter that you're effectively a lame duck. There's suits going left and right. I don't need this latest ones against Uber and getting people on the Uber One subscriptions. I don't even want to address it. And I just think that in the new administration, we'll see what happens. Obviously, there's diversity within Trump's advisors, and some are certainly anti-tech. But it's just there was another Microsoft lawsuit, I think, by DOJ, or at least an investigation by DOJ. It's at this point, it's almost laughable, but not necessarily in a good way.
You know what's better though? You didn't have to get bootleg Jerky Boys cassettes like you used to have to back in the day. You go on YouTube and get it.
Yeah, cassettes. Sue everybody. Punitive damages. Anyway, before we get to our closer, let's go back to XAI. Now, this is the technology company, 25% owned by X Corp, which is basically Twitter shareholders. This is, this is where the technology, a lot of it exists for autonomy. And we have a report here that the Wall Street Journal has said that XAI is in talks with Tesla, so not X Corp, Tesla, about technology sharing and resources. So on that front, let's just note that Elon, remember, is owed like $50-60 billion, which Tesla shareholders want him to get. And there was a court that was trying to deny it. Feels politically motivated, but whatever. If he doesn't get those dollars, like even though Tesla represents the vast majority of his wealth, like he owns more in percentage terms, obviously, of X Corp and XAI. And if you're developing, and if the value of that Tesla is discounting right now in terms of the stock going up post-Trump because of the hope for a national framework, if the value is in the robotaxi, which will be driven by the technology of XAI, the question is, where will that value land? And will it exist in XAI rather than solely for the benefit of the Tesla shareholders? And I'd further point out, like just going back to what we just talked about, and if Tesla doesn't own the entire fleet and we have sub-fleets, right, you have value that will emerge from this robotaxi that may exist in a variety of pockets. So I think it was an interesting journal report in terms of that. And I think we should just highlight that for our investors who are looking at their investments that they have available to them today, right now, of Tesla.
I also think investors need to watch what happens with Dojo. Does Tesla continue to invest in Dojo, or do they slowly close it down and then does Elon revert resources, which he publicly has, with the NVIDIA H100s towards XAI? And then we also need to watch, is there a licensing agreement around FSD where they start using the XAI to train some of the FSD? Was FSD 13 trained on some of the XAI hardware and algorithms? That's a question that I think we should have publicly addressed at some point, hopefully by Tesla or Mr. Musk himself.
Historically, you can basically just say follow who can fund it and then where the owner benefits the most. The who can fund it thing is like, in Elon's case, it doesn't matter which company he goes to. He will be able to fund it just based on his position in the market through external investors or otherwise. So yeah, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Again, because if you're an owner of Tesla, you want to make sure that value accretes to you and not to one of these subsidiary companies.
Or do we also watch the moves made by Mr. Larry Ellison, since Mr. Ellison is publicly one of Mr. Musk's biggest backers, both vocally and financially, and Mr. Ellison did have a Tesla board seat for quite a while. Perhaps he gets involved with XAI. That could be an interesting signal to watch there.
Sure. I mean, he's got a lot of money. He's a very smart person, and, anyone. I mean, I think there's a long list of people with money that would want to be partners, whichever of these companies they are available to him. He, like I said, does not have a challenge raising. I don't care what you hear about the venture markets, the public markets, whatever. Elon Musk and any company is not going to have trouble raising money at this point.
Staying on that, it's interesting. I talked to an investor in the Boring Company, part of that Elon investor group that invested in him. And this investor gives me this whole breakdown on how the SpaceX Starships are going to take the boring tunnels to space, and they're going to dig tunnels on Mars, and that's where they're going to get their payday. I mean, it's amazing how these people think this stuff through.
Yeah, we'll see we'll see what goes on there. But yes, we know SpaceX's ultimate goal is to get people to Mars, but we'll save that for a future podcast. Why don't we finish up with something that we saw on X? There's a Waymo had a crash in LA. We've seen some video. It looks like a rainy street. Is this going to be a big issue? Obviously, there's no details that I've seen yet. It doesn't appear that anyone hurt. It's a fender bender. So thoughts on this?
No media coverage. No KTLA, no local CBS coverage, no LA Times coverage. Odd. Because when the cruise incident happened, it was everywhere.
Yeah, but there was a person that was hurt there. This one looked more of a fender bender. I'm assuming this probably happens in San Francisco. I don't know.
It looked horrific from the photograph. It looks horrific. What we really do need, though, for the clarity of this industry is to get a detailed police report of what actually happened. And I would encourage Waymo to make that data public, because the way that it looks like an individual or individuals ran a red light and ran into the Waymo vehicle. I cannot confirm that. That's just based purely on speculation of what I saw in the photographs, the way the vehicle was hit. If that was the case, or if Waymo's at fault, I advise them to make it public and how they're going to fix it, because the local LA politicians will run with this and it will start to erode public trust if the data is not made public.
This just speaks to what we've talked about over the last podcast, and is having a better PR strategy and being ahead of things. Like just having someone for us to call, for example, and be like, hey, what's the deal with this? And well, we looked at the cameras, it's this, that, and the other thing, and basically kill it before it generates momentum. Because let's say I get a CNBC appearance on Monday and I get asked about, we're talking about Uber or whatever it is. Like, well, Waymo's a threat. Well, is Waymo a threat? Wasn't there this big accident in LA? If I had information about, the cause of the accident on CNBC, a widely, broadcast, then you've addressed the issue. So I think it's just, they need to come up with a better PR strategy at Waymo. I think like a lot of times, like what I've been dealing with Google overall, like for example, their ad sales on Google TV. Like Google's a company that's just like, we're so smart, the technology's so good, the advertisers will just come. Like, no, you have to get, seasoned advertising people to put ads, that you're selling into YouTube TV. Like some things just don't come to you because you're the best Betamax out there. And in this case, I think it's a miss on Waymo. Hopefully it doesn't bite them in the ass in a way that's going to be harmful for the entire industry.
Hopefully they can learn from this, because you're right. You're a prominent individual and you go on CNBC and you speak about it. You need to give truthful, honest information. You can't give speculation. That's you. Then there's other people who will remain anonymous that will use this to tear down the industry for their own political good and their own financial windfall. That we have to be careful of. So if there was transparency in a publicly available database or a public report that clarifies exactly what this is, the speculation would die. We have to eliminate the speculation. This industry is going to be in big trouble because it's no longer a technology, it's a business, and it's an investable business. Individuals around the world are investing in autonomy, and each and every week, you and I will continue to break down those investments and what's happened in the autonomy markets. Well, this week we had wine, turkey, and yummy food. But next week, we're gearing up into the holidays. What do we need to look for in the autonomy market?
Well, for me, it's a busy autonomy week heading to Dallas, seeing a startup, some fleet companies, and going to AT&T Stadium, where the Cowboys finally got their first victory for the big AT&T meeting. So it should be a busy week. We'll see what news breaks in the world of autonomy between now and next week.
You're hitting the road, going to the big D. Are you going to rock the cowboy hat and the boots?
I was thinking more of wearing my Eagles jersey into AT&T Stadium and see what happens.
That's worth the price of admission. And if you do that, we hope you're back here next week, because there's going to be a lot to talk about as Walt hits the road in his Eagles gear in the Big D. The future is bright. The future is autonomous. The future is scaling autonomous vehicles. Until next week,